Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another exciting episode and edition of the Brethren Podcast. That's Brethren like bread, BREADREN, because we always talking about our bread and we always getting that bread. And when I say we, it feels great, and it is always my pleasure to welcome my brothers onto this call with me, Dr. Ajamu Lovin, PhD of Lovin Consulting LLC and Destrian Wells Consulting. How are y'all doing this evening, gentlemen?
Doing absolutely great.
Yeah, man, things are great.
Positively wonderful. So first, let's address, the elephant in the room, which ain't really an elephant. We took a little break because that's what we got to do. And plus, like I, have told you all in the episodes previous to this one, my illustrious co-hosts are always doing great things across this country. So they were parlaying and participating in professional development across the United States. I wasn't able to attend, but they felt the need to video call me while they sat on a balcony with, enjoying a tropical breeze. I won't go into details of where they were, all of that. So, yeah, the glasses didn't have water in it, so you may not recall. But, you know what I'm saying? That's not the reason we didn't record. It wasn't because I felt salty and didn't want to talk to them. It was just that we decided to take a break off. Of course, Easter passed, and we got families with our fathers and husbands, so we took time off to enjoy. Happy belated birthday to the Prince, Young Dallas DJ's son.
Well, thank you.
So let's get back to what we normally do and how we do it. Dr. Lovin, introduce the drink that you were sipping on this evening.
Oh, this evening I am sipping on a little bit of Tito's vodka and Sprite. Keeping it light.
Okay.
Yeah, light. Yeah.
Home team. DJ, what's good? I mean, we know what's good, but what's good? No. Matter of fact, because Dallas' birthday just passed, so you might be doing something different. Let's see if we're gonna get a surprise.
Why would you even hype the crowd up to be disappointed in such a way? Go ahead.
Go ahead. What?
I plead the fifth.
Man.
Nah, man. You know what it is, man. Hennessy, man. Hennessy.
All right, so it's Hennessy Black?
Splash Coke, yeah.
Okay. So it's not just plain Hennessy, it's Hennessy Black.
That is different.
It's different. So
it's different like that patent leather black Jordan. I mean, they still Jordans. Yeah. I wouldn't call them graduation shoes or nothing like that, but whatever. They talking about their formal Jordans.
Right, the all black.
Save it for the after show, man.
Yeah,
just save it for the after show.
Save it for the after show. We're gonna get into that and much more after show. But yes, I am sipping on the Johnny Walker Black Label. That bottle will be here until it's gone, and then I'll update y'all. So, as we always do, gentlemen, cheers to a wonderful conversation, knowledge being dropped, and things being learned. Cheers.
Cheers.
Salute, man.
All right. So, to kick off this episode, tonight's topic, we're going to talk about overcoming challenges and dealing with pressure. And the questions that we're going to pose, and this is from, this is in the words of Dr. Lovin, PhD, I might add. Recognizing the difference between challenges and outside pressure, organizing your life so you can address real challenges and alleviate pressure, and surrounding yourself with people who don't add to pressure but help you recognize and meet challenges. Number 3 is going to be the kicker, because I think it's going to really wake a lot of people up, me included, ourselves included, because like we always say, a lot of this is just us talking to ourselves. You know what I'm saying? And y'all just catching the conversation because we doing the due diligence of recording this. Well, let's kick it off, Dr. Lovin. I'm going to throw it to you, because you eloquently, broke down the outline, if you will, of this topic tonight. So let's just jump right into it, and I'm going to throw it to you on overcoming challenges and dealing with pressure. And you, as for your first point, you were saying recognizing the difference between challenges and outside pressure, because some people might look at challenge and pressure as interchangeable, which, in all intents and purposes it can be, but for this topic of conversation, just, give some clarification, if you will.
Yeah, so I'll let this quote from Dame Lillard, who hit that Portland Trailblazer, hit that game-winning last-second shot, and everybody was falling all over themselves, and then there's this meme on social media with him just looking at the camera, all steady, like, yeah, you knew this could happen, that type of deal. And so they asked him about, how you could deal with what they call pressure of having to, take that last second shot. And he said, pressure? Nah, fam. This is just playing ball. Pressure is the homeless man who doesn't know where his next meal is coming from. Pressure is the single mom who's trying to scuffle rent. We get paid a lot of money to play a game. Don't get me wrong. There are challenges. But to call it pressure is almost an insult to regular people. And I thought, man, that was a pretty interesting quote, I think, on a number of levels. Number one, it showed sort of his hierarchical understanding of how comfortable he was, and he is appreciating, the privilege that he has relative to a lot of what, that he says just regular people in terms of what we experience. And so he described his, the focus necessary to hit the shot that he had to hit as a challenge that he has within his otherwise pretty decent and pretty calm life. But he talked about the pressures in these outside things that you're going to experience and that normal, regular folks, our listeners, right, included, have to experience when we're trying to do the things that we want to do. So it's the outside pressure that affects, I think, in some ways, how well some of us approach the challenges, or in some cases even recognize the challenges around us. Okay, so you have things that you want to accomplish in life, goals that you put out there. We've done a whole episode on goal setting, and so you can go back and check out that archive if you really, want to step up that part of your life. And so those goals that you break down into individual milestones are going to represent small challenges to you if you approach them in the right way, right? But even as you move along, there are going to be things that will happen. There'll be outside pressures. People may get sick. Someone might lose a job. A relationship might end. You could have tough times, having tough times at your job in terms of interpersonal relationship. All of these things can create a pressure-filled environment and give you the opportunity to have a moment that might not be so, let's say, productive, where you cut somebody out or blow up or something like that. So I think when I look at the difference between, the challenges that you have, challenges tend to come at you in a more organized way, and things that you know are going to happen. He knew that there was a decent chance at the end of the basketball game, you're going to have to take a shot. Shots all through the basketball, right? But what you don't know is, someone who you care about is sick, or, the huge medical bill come on because of something like that, or business gets lost, or storm. All these things that come in people's lives, man, can add pressure. And if you aren't careful, pressure can cripple you to the point that you just don't want to do anything. And so you have to learn ways to deal with and cope with that pressure and stress that you're feeling in life in general. I think we as black men, that's one of those things that we need to, I think, talk more about, right? Because I think, the challenges side of it, people are more inclined to be open with the challenges that they face in terms of proving that they are worthy to make the next step on their career or in the business that they own. But I think the pressures on the outside, people are a little bit more reluctant to talk about the things that really sort of make life difficult for them in certain ways, whether they have difficulty talking to or maintaining real intimate relationships with friends and all of these other things that come crashing down on you, especially in this social media rich world, and just make life in a lot of ways uncomfortable. So that's sort of where I was going with this in terms of just, let's think about positive ways to lead a positive life despite the pressures that are going to surround us, but and lead it in a way where we are goal oriented and we face and recognize the challenges in front of us and we deal with them in ways that are going to be constructive and helpful to us.
Most definitely, and I like the way you put that, and we definitely can delve deeper into it. I'm gonna throw it to DJ because he got something that he wanted to say, as far as elaborating on it, and then I got something that I want to follow up with just to kind of clarify for my own purposes and maybe somebody else who's listening. But go ahead, DJ, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just to piggyback on what Dr. Levin was saying, oftentimes, and just follow me on this, the problem that we see or we focus on is not the problem. The real problem is what is our attitude towards the problem, right? So when we talk about pressure and we talk about challenges, it's important that we frame the issue and we focus our energy on our response. Oftentimes we get boggled down in, oh, this is going to be so difficult. This is going to be so hard. It's going to be so cumbersome. If you take the time to focus your energy on what your response will be, like he talked about Dame Lillard, he said that, I know I'm going to have to take the shot. I mean, that's the pressure. That's the challenge. My response is crafted in the hours that, he puts into the gym, into the repetition that he puts into being prepared to make that shot. So what I'm saying is we need to learn to control what we can. There are going to be things outside of our control, as Dr. Levin alluded to, that we have no bearing over. What we can control is our activity and our response. Challenges are ultimately meant to be overcome. And for all intents and purposes, pressure is meant to help break off those rough stones or those rough things in your life and help turn you into a diamond. If you think about, if you go to the jewelry store, the finest diamonds have often undergone the most pressure and the most chaos, and they've been dug from the deepest depths of the earth. And I think that this is something that we can apply to our lives to understand that you could be being fitted to be a diamond because you're going through a challenge or a situation that you may deem as pressure. And I think also understanding the difference between the two and the opportunity that exists within that is something that's key and critical as we matriculate through this conversation, just so that the listeners are not bogged down in the vernacular of the challenge or pressure. This is not a one versus the other situation. It is understanding how to appropriately deal with pressure and overcome the challenges that might be associated with said pressures. So, like you said earlier, AJ, they could be one and the same, but oftentimes it's one that's feeding into another, whether that be the pressure into the challenge or the challenge into the pressure. So, I think that's important for us to unpack and address as we move forward.
Correct. And you pretty much kind of answered my question, but I'll still kind of pose it in a sense because, like we said, I like the way you put that. Pressures arise, the pressures of life, the pressures of, jobs, the pressures of relationships, the pressures of society bring about challenges that you have to overcome, which is a pertinent point to put in there.
Right.
And like we said, we could have a versus conversation. We could have challenges versus this, which we've done, with some topics in the past, but this one is a very nuanced conversation because it's easy to slip off into the versus conversation. But the way that we've posed and the way that, it's being framed now is we're going to talk about the pressures of said, environments and the challenges that come about and how we overcome that and deal with the pressure itself. And right now, like I've honestly forgotten my actual question because that thought in itself has gotten me to thinking, really hard. Just based on the fact that pressures are something that we can't necessarily control. And that, I guess I'll put it in that way, is to lay it out in layman's terms for people who are still just caught up in thought like me. Pressures are things that we can't necessarily control. It comes about, like we said, pressures of society, pressures of, family, pressure from friends, peer pressure, and peer pressure can be peers, at work, peers at home, your friends, where the pressure of things they want you to do, expectations and things of that nature come about, and the challenges that come about to overcome those, you overcome those challenges to kind of deal with the pressure in a sense. But I want to throw it back to, go ahead.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, where you're going with that, one of the things that I think is important is that we understand that it's almost like you're starting this conversation around understanding the structure of things. So you have a fighting chance to defeat what it is that you understand. And again, oftentimes we need to be able to define things. So when you say the challenges that arise from said pressures, that's important because, I would push back on you just a little bit when you say, we can't necessarily control those pressures because we face several types of pressures. They can be internal or they can be external. Some of those external factors we can't do anything about, but some of them you also can. And I think Dr. Loving alluded to it in the outline, which I know we'll go deeper, but it's the choices that you make about the people that are in your life and so on and so forth. But if I just back up from there, when you just think about the internal pressures, there's a book by Don Miguel Ruiz called The Four Agreements. Anybody that knows me knows that I tout the Four Agreements. I gave it to my wife. I'm like, hey, put this in your purse. If we ever have an issue, it's probably one of these things that's not occurring that either I'm not doing or you're not doing. One of the Four Agreements is to not take things personally and to always do your best, right? So that's something that's extremely difficult to do, but a lot of that is internal. And the author argues that by just focusing on that agreement alone, you can completely transform your life because you stop wasting time and energy on tearing yourself down, adding pressure and challenges to your life that otherwise wouldn't exist if you didn't, A, take things personally, and B, apply that pressure or create the challenges that you now have to also overcome in your life. So I just wanted to push back on that just a bit, and more than happy to dive deeper and talk about it, but happy to hear what you and Dr. Loving have to say from that perspective.
Well, Doc, I'm gonna throw it to you. Go ahead.
No, so the way that I see it is that the challenges, at least as I was describing them, and from the quote from Dane Lillard, were more, hey, these are things to be expected of you, that these things that you need to knock down in order for you to be successful in the professional realm, right? And let's be real. If you do what you're supposed to do with respect to your challenges, then yeah, they remain challenges. And if you're organized in your approach, you can operate the way you're supposed to operate when your chance to take the shot comes up, right? But and so that, I think that's an important thing to recognize if you've done the right work. If not, and you haven't done that right work, then those challenges now can create a pressure-filled environment. I know people who are natural procrastinators, myself being one of them, right? And I used to get myself into trouble at the time while I was in school by waiting until the last minute to write a paper, right? Now, the writing of the paper, the organizing of it, doing all that work was a challenge. That's the way the school's set up. It's supposed to be a challenging process, right? If you do what you're supposed to do in a timely fashion, then it doesn't create any more pressure than is necessary, to rise to the challenge appropriately. If you wait till the last minute, now you're running around like a chicken with his head cut off. Everything that's a minor delay is a major emergency. You created a pressure-filled environment. I'm certain while I was in college, I took years off of my life, right? So one of the major tools that you can use to meet your challenges and try to make sure that you minimize as much pressure as you possibly can in your goal-oriented life is to try to automate things, right? Try to use your calendar and your within your phone. It's not just for fun. You also have some constructive things that you can do with the apps in there, right? To remind yourself to study, to remind yourself to hit certain goalposts with your paper. Let's just say you're doing that. If you remind you to take a certain number of jump shots at a certain point in time in the day, what happens is you start moving in a direction where you're moving towards meeting those challenges that are in your life, and then those challenges themselves don't necessarily constitute pressure for you because you've handled them in the right way. Now, the pressure can still come at you, right? Because we live life, and as I'll say every time we talk, people are more important than things, right? And so all of those goals that you put together and the things that you're going to do to reach them can, easily be superseded if someone in your life who you love tremendously has to go through something that's gonna take up your time or take up your resources in terms of money, and you love that individual and you're gonna do what's necessary. And that can create outside pressure. A lot of times people who are working professionally have to take care of a sick loved one. That's one of those things that no matter how great you are at your job, it's going to put outside pressure. It's going to put pressure on you in your situation. So you can only organize your way so much through something like that. And so when I talk about pressure, part of it is doing what you can do, but the other part of it is recognizing that even when you do what you can do, there's a lot that can happen outside of your control, right? And don't be afraid to seek professional help. And that's professional help on the side of, working with somebody who's an executive coach or working with a mentor, to try to take you out of that pressure filled space, all the way to physically taking maybe some yoga classes or martial arts to learn how to relax, or if it's necessary, seeing a therapist, right? There are a lot of people in certain communities that have a major knock against the idea of therapy. But I think that, your mental health is just as important as your physical health and your financial health, right? You only get one you, okay? And so you got to take care of yourself. And so if you have some feelings where you feel like you can't get out of bed before a certain time, yeah, obviously that's going to impact the way that you're able to address your challenges and maybe create pressure-filled environments for you. But that pressure that's coming from that depression or whatever that is, man, you gotta address that stuff, man. Those things can fester and they ruin the one thing that you can't get back. They ruin your time on earth, right? You can't get this back. Those minutes that you waste, or that you use wallowing and feeling sad because you just don't know why, that's not something that you have to go through. And so having the right type of people on your team, and if that team member includes a therapist, man, congratulations for doing the work you needed to do to get to where you need to go. That's all I got to say about that.
Most definitely. I may be going slightly off in a tangent, but I did want to pose to you all, because it kind of came up in my mind. I don't know if it was intentionally brought up, in you all's explanations and breakdown, but perceived pressure, because a lot of people, we not in a negative way, we perceive that there's pressure, and like you said, it's situations where we could have easily avoided the pressure-filled environment, procrastination and things of that nature too, and now we've gotten ourselves into a situation where there is actual pressure that we could have avoided, and now we have a challenge to overcome. But I want to throw it to DJ, and then I'll throw it back to you, Dr. Lovin, on just some ways of just maybe avoiding putting yourself in position to be overcome by pressure, to where you have to now, face and deal with with certain challenges brought on by this pressure that you, for all intents and purposes, brought on yourself.
Well, so I think about it. I think about it this way. So you have crisis, or I should say it this way: you have responsibilities, and then you have crisis. I think if we refer back to again the Damian Lillard quote, what Dame is talking about up front is it's his responsibility to take that shot for his team. It's his responsibility to lead them. It's his responsibility to accept the challenge. And you see, that's a mindset and that's a mentality that he's decided to have. If his mindset were that, oh my God, I may have to take this shot. Oh my God, they're looking to me for leadership. You would be in a crisis. And I think that is the differentiating factor is the mindset. Do you see the situation as a crisis or do you see it as your responsibility? I am often reminded, you were at my wedding. When I got married, he told me, the bishop told me, it was my cousin, he said, even if it's not your fault, it's still your problem. And so just because something is not your fault, it doesn't mean it's not your problem. But again, it's your mindset. How do you respond to it? What is your attitude towards the problem? You need to determine a few things to answer your question directly. How do you relieve some of this? Determine who and what you are accountable to and for. All right? That's the first thing. The second thing you need to ask yourself is, do you have a clear understanding about the dynamics of the relationship that you're engaged with whoever you're responsible to, or the things that you're responsible for? Because that's going to define how you perceive or receive and meet said challenge or pressure. One of the things that I've become keenly aware of is that I tend to become a default for people who do exactly what Dr. Loving talked about in terms of my corporate setting. If someone fails to prepare, procrastinate, because I'm in a, mid-level, executive type role, senior managers or others in leadership positions, when their plate becomes full, they then come to you. But what I try to communicate up front, and I try to do it in a very respectful way. We talked about communicating in relationships earlier on previous calls. I want them to know that I'm there to help, assist, and try to deliver, but I'm clear that a failure to plan on your behalf does not create an emergency on mine, because I'm being evaluated on a set of circumstances and criteria that I'm accountable for. I know who I'm accountable to. Now, if that aligns with what you're asking me to do, great. I'll drop everything and do it now. But if I'm going to take the L for you to get the W, that's hard. Because again, a failure to plan on your behalf should not create an emergency on mine, but that's something you have to communicate up front. That alleviates some of the pressure and the challenges of time restraints, limited resources, all those things that you might face, which then turn into something that Dr. Loving alluded to, which is anxiety, depression, and the list could go on and on. But those things have a severe impact on your mental health and your well-being. And your best ability is always going to be your availability. I don't care how talented you are. If you can't show up to produce and perform, you're now expendable. So you have to take care of yourself, as Dr. Loving alluded to. There are resources that are available. And I think as a community, specifically African-American community, we don't tap into those resources enough. If you work, you likely have insurance, and counseling is a part of that. You can see someone, talk to someone about the stresses, the pressures, the challenges that you're facing, and get a professional opinion to try to develop some strategies. And like Dr. Loving said, maybe get some automation going to take some of the decision making out of the equation. A lot of folks just need structure, but everyone doesn't know how to implement that. So having a professional on your side doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you stronger. And I would say that in terms of identifying how you can relieve some of these stresses, these challenges, and these pressures, it starts with a self-evaluation and truly taking an introspective look, being honest with yourself and saying, here are the things that I am currently struggling with that I cannot get beyond myself, and I'm going to need some professional advice. Because sometimes people don't like to hear the word help, so we'll say advice. Maybe I need some professional advice on this. What's the harm in doing it? I think there's a severely negative stigma attached to it, but really it's empowerment. The more education you have, the more resources you have, the better equipped you are to handle whatever issues or challenges that might arise. And then you also take those things and you share them with the people around you. And all of a sudden you're more productive, and so are the people around you as well.
Well put, and I always like to frame it in the reference of who better to vent to than a nonpartisan party. You know what I'm saying? Because you can go vent to your friends and they're going to be biased. You can go vent to your family and they're going to be biased. They're going to infuse their opinions and their feelings and emotions into, you know, something that you're seriously dealing with. So why not talk to somebody who is completely, you know, unbiased in their approach, you know, medical, scientific when it comes to it in most cases, where they, you know, can honestly give you real feedback on, you know, your feelings and how and why you're feeling a certain way and how and why you're dealing with things in a certain way, and connecting dots that you could never connect for yourself, and then nobody else in your life could actually connect for you. So, you know, when you frame things different, I like the way you put that. When you really look at things from a different way, instead of saying help, advice, it's just one of those things where it is needed. And that segued into the second point that Dr. Loving wanted to bring up in this conversation, was organizing your life so that you can address real challenges and alleviate pressure. And for me personally, and this was something that we issued out in the challenge, which is still going, by the way, is taking a solid, tangible goal, putting it a month out, and then creating tangible, you know, midway goals to kind of make sure that you're on track for that. But just basically, it was done in an effort to get ourselves and, you know, our listeners to organize, and just seeing the difference between, you know, taking a goal, organizing it, and breaking it down to attainable things, and seeing how much easier it is than just saying, oh, I want to do this, and kind of just letting it float. And as you get around to it, you kind of do it here. And for me personally, it's been the difference of having an arts and crafts project versus having a project. And when I say a project, this is something that's due by a certain time, and it's a grade, and it's worth a lot of my grade in this thing called life. Versus, you know, taking something and just making it a goal where it's like, oh, you know, it's a hobby. I'll get to it when I get to it. I got some spare time today. I'll do 10% of it now. Oh, I got some extra time next week. I'll put in another 10% effort into it. And now, based on this, it'll take me 10 months to attain this goal. Whereas if I organize it, I can get it done in a month, because that's the goal limit that we set for ourselves this go around, which was 1 month. And I'm proud to say that I'm well on my way to attaining my goal. I may not reach my actual goal, but I know that, you know, by having it in this tangible format that we've put it into with the challenge, I've done way better than I would have if I would have treated it in the sense of maybe like it's just like I said, maybe like a hobby. It's not a hobby now. It's something that I have to do. But Dr. Love, and I'll throw it to you to go ahead and, you know, elaborate more on the point of organizing your life so that you can address the challenges and alleviate pressure in certain areas.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you're not used to doing certain things, everything feels like pressure. Like if you're a brother who's been, you know, living at mama's house in the basement chilling, you know, and then at a certain point, you have to go from paying no bills, having no car, not paying for anything, to now you have to pay for, you know, pay for your own house or apartment and lights and all. That can feel like pressure. And it can feel like a lot of pressure if you've never had to do it and you're having to do it all at once. That's why, you know, while you're parenting, you're supposed to give your kids, you know, certain chores or certain responsibilities, because the same way that, you know, a baby bird is preparing to fly, your kids are preparing to live their lives as adults. And so you have to introduce, you know, some challenges and in some ways create pressure at certain lives, at points in their lives as parents, to make sure that they know that they're responsible for keeping a clean house by doing laundry and cleaning their room, or have a responsibility for something, right? Have a job, do something. And so my point is, just like the smallest amount of weight feels extraordinarily heavy to a person who's never lifted weights before in the gym, you go in there with somebody that lifts all the time, it's nothing to them, right? Or even someone who lifts or works out a reasonable amount of time, you know, they feel fine. But you take that person that's never gone to the gym, who's never pushed themselves, who's never, you know, had to do these things that we look at as relatively mundane, and they are having a tough time making it through the workout, and they're sore for the next few days. And so I understand that pressure is kind of relative. That's why I'm getting at, and it's something that you grow to handle and cope with and deal with better and better if you're doing some of the right things. And some of those things can be like therapeutic in terms of whether it's massages or yoga or actual therapy where you're talking to a professional or whatever it is that you do to depressurize. But man, as I look around at this country, man, we got a lot of people having a tough time dealing with pressure, with just the pressure of life, man. And people are doing rash things and hurting other people, killing themselves, because they don't have the stuff that they want or the life that they see on social media or whatever it is that they think they're owed or how they somehow are worthy of drawing breath for other people who are different than they are not. Like, a lot of this is just we have got to learn how to, I don't know, as humans, just be human, right? To give ourselves the slack that we need and the space that we need to do the constructive things. I don't care if it's just sitting down outside and putting your toes in the dirt. They have this whole thing on grounding and how it can get some of the negative energy out of your body by you being barefoot on the earth and just touching the ground. Like, whatever it is that you need to do to connect, realize that you are important and that you're worth it and that you might need to schedule time for you to do it so that you can continue to really, keep up that self maintenance, right? People treat their bodies like an old jalopy sometimes. Just put enough gas in it in terms of food and coffee to keep it going and never take it to get the diagnostics that it needs to get the oil change, and it starts to run worse. That's sufficient to the point that your body, your mind, your goals, everything that you're trying to accomplish ends up, the engine block cracks because you didn't take it to get an oil change, and now the whole thing, your whole life feels like a disaster, and everything feels like a crazy amount of pressure because you didn't do the things necessary to maintain and handle your body and your mind and your life in the type of way that it shows that you care about it. So that's what I have to say on that.
Most definitely. I'm gonna go ahead and throw it to DJ. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that, man, Dr. Lovin touched on several great points, but I'll just highlight a few things that I wanted to have some commentary on. I completely agree that pressure is absolutely relative. I think that what we have to realize is that because pressure exists, challenges exist, we need to have a certain skill set, and one of those skills that we need to have is coping. But it needs to be a healthy coping mechanism. So the question that I would pose to the listeners is, do you have a healthy coping mechanism? Whether that be, gym time, a jog in, do you read, like Doc said, do you take walks, connect with the earth, or put your feet in the dirt, what have you? Do you do yoga? Whatever it is for you that gives you some type of release to let some of those stressors out, you have to find something, because he couldn't have articulated it better that self-care is critical. For me personally, I work for a great organization corporately, and, they give us a lot of time to potentially take. Look, man, I don't do it often, but here and there, I have to take a mental health day because I deal with, various things, in your personal life, and it's not necessarily bad, but responsibility, which I'll go into shortly, but, you may need to just take a mental health day, a day for yourself. Go do something for you, whether that's to hit a couple of golf balls, whether that's to go get your hands and your nails done, ladies, exfoliate, get your facial, whatever it is you do, or if it's to sit on your deck and watch the sunrise and have a cocktail, whatever it is, do something for yourself. Because we spend so much time doing things for other people that when you don't take time for that self-care, the pressure can truly mount. Because I think that's where a lot of people feel like the walls begin to cave in a bit, where they feel like they're working to be free and have choice, but they ultimately see it as an illusion of choice because they don't see the freedom that the job is providing or the income is providing, and then they feel restricted. And those pressures can quickly build, and you talk about challenges that you're facing or whatever, that can grow on you quickly. But I'll just touch on this quickly, and then I'll stop. I'll pause. I feel like responsibility is a learned behavior, though. You don't just wake up and you go, okay, now you're 25, you're responsible. It's a learned behavior. It's a series of actions, right? And I think we need to look at things when people are, early childhood, like when you get entry-level employees, and ultimately as people are climbing whatever ladder they're climbing, you need to add some additional responsibility. And that's personal too, within your relationships as well. If you don't allow a person to take on more responsibility over time, what happens in pressure-packed situations is they fold. They don't see this as responsibility. It immediately looks like some foreign thing. And I think that for most folks, that's what pressure is. It's some foreign thing, or it is this thing that continuously shows up that I have no solution for, i.e., that single mother that Dame Lillard talked about saying, hey, she has to pay the rent. That could be a month by month thing for that person. And I think in context, we have to be able to do what Dame did and take a step back and look at the issues that we have in our lives, not to minimize anyone's issues, but to be able to broadly look at our society and see how fortunate many of us may be, even in the face of some of the challenges that we have. We may not have the pressure that's placed at our footsteps or at our feet that others might have in terms of an eviction notice with nowhere to go. You may say, well, it's going to be a challenge to pay this $600 light bill this month, but you didn't say you couldn't pay it. You said it was going to be a challenge. That person is trying to figure out if they're going to have somewhere to stay for them and their children. He talked about the homeless person with nothing to eat. I might get the check at a restaurant and go, really? This much? But I'm not saying I can't pay it. That homeless person doesn't have anything to eat. So you really need to take a step back and sometimes see that first-class problems have become our issues. And if you are in a situation where your life has gotten so bad that you have first-class problems, you kind of need to pause and reset. Have a grateful moment, and then strategize on how you relieve some of those things. But there are people every day that are waking up in the conditions that Dame is talking about, and they have no way out. They have no resources that they can tap into, or that maybe they don't know about. But most of our listeners do. They have us. They have a network of people. If they've surrounded themselves with the right people, they've been listening and developing their strategic partnerships in their power circle. And they're willing to exercise some emotional intelligence, and they're, being intentional about things. They have some options. And I just think that we have to really, really look again introspectively and understand that some of the things that we place great emphasis on, for many others, would be considered a luxury. And that's not to be overstated, and it's not meant to undermine any issues that anyone is going through. Because I do know one thing is that your imagination is undefeated. So whatever your mind can conceive or really hone in on, it is very real. So it doesn't matter how much money you have, you're not exempt from pressure, challenges, anxiety, any of these things. But it comes down to really having a plan, having a proper people support system, and understanding the resources that are available to you.
Most definitely, and I think what you kind of alluded to, and I want to bring up that point is the weight that perception and perspective play on pressure. Because not everybody has the mental capacity or the mental ability to be able to be in a situation where pressure is there, and then it was something that I kind of was raised with, whereas you may be in a situation where you got dinner on the table and it's not what you want, so you complain about it. But then, do you have the ability, perception-wise, to understand there is someone who does not have, and basically check yourself, like the saying goes, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because honestly, in those kind of situations where you aren't able to understand the perception and the perspective of which you're in a situation, you let it get to you, and then that pressure builds, and we all know pressure busts pipes, and you are that pipe. And it could have been the simple thing where somebody could have stepped in and told you something that you didn't hear, or you could have stepped in and told yourself something that you needed to hear, but because of the perception, the perspective of which you were looking at things, you weren't able to do that. And that's not to put all of the weight of the situation on on the individual alone, because we all know that society and economics and things, there are a lot of different factors and variables that go into place when we're talking about pressure in the general sense. You can branch off and find out that a single situation has been attributed to a person from multiple aspects, and it all it all prescribes and subscribes to the pressure that the person is going through. But we were talking about ways of organizing and things of that nature, and I'll just speak personally for myself, DJ. Like you mentioned, go out and do something that's for you. But I want to pose a situation and a scenario to both of you all, and where people, we live in a capitalistic society. We know this, and this may go deep and it may go left, but I'm willing to take this chance because it's real. Everybody gets a job. Everybody who has a job knows from day one how much time, and when I say time, you know what I'm talking about. Vacation time and sick time, you are allotted, how much you are accrued. Some people get it straight up and down. Some people accrue it based on, hours. Some people accrue it based on how many years they've been with the company or whatever. But we all know you have so many days and so much time that you can use. Sick time, we'll throw that out the window, because a lot of jobs require you to have proof of sickness. So I've had jobs before where if I took a sick day, I needed a doctor's excuse to use it. But let's just talk about the vacation days for a minute. Right now, I have 90 hours of vacation leave, paid vacation leave. But let's talk about the stigma and the perception behind specifically Americans. Because other countries I've noticed, they force you to take your vacation. I know for a fact in Australia, they're required, the government requires, all businesses over a certain number of employees to give you 3 months of what they call holiday, and you have to take it. We got the thing over here where some of your time rolls over, some of it doesn't. But we all know people that are literally afraid to take vacation. It's given to you. Like, you have this time. Let's say you got 20 hours of vacation. You work 8 hours a day. That means you can take off 2 full days and probably a half. But we got people that are afraid to put in for vacation time because of the perception of what it might look like and the pressure that's going to come along with it. It was like, oh, well, if I take 2 days off, when I come back, the pressure is going to get to me. Like, I'm going to have more work to do because I missed out. I'm not here. Or if I take 2 days, then how are my coworkers going to look at me because I left them with this load to deal with by themselves? But I want to throw that to you all, this scenario, because I know a lot of people are dealing with it. A lot of people are. And I'll go so far as to say majority of people are dealing with it. Unless you're in that high level of upper management to where you can literally do whatever you want, like everybody's dealing with that, the pressure of, I can't even take vacation and I got it piled up. But it's like, dang, I can't really do this to my job. I can't do this to my coworker. What will my boss think if I'm taking too much, I'm taking vacation. It looks bad. Like, I just really wanted to throw that out there, and we can definitely dive way deeper into it in the after show because I know it's something that's with a lot of people. But Dr. Love, and I'll throw it to you first, and then DJ, I'll throw it to you after that. Go ahead.
Well, and it's funny, man. This is one of those things that I think baby boomers and Generation X people have this leaving work guilt that I'm happy to say the millennials have started to unload that, right? They're like, no, I care about quality of life and my time means something to me and I'm taking all the vacation and I'm also, demanding flex work schedule. They are a group as a generation overall that have decided to test the bounds of how human resources has traditionally treated and incentivized employees. And they're like, no, my time means something to me. And I want to have certain experiences. And I recognize that this job is designed, it's a tool to help me get a certain quality of life, and that life matters. And so I think it's awesome that younger people and younger generations sort of have that as a part of their overall mindset that allows them to say, okay, well, I am going to take some days, because the prevailing sort of American notion is that the people out there, those are the real go-getters, the people who are showing face time in front of all of the people at the office. Those are the ones that are really getting everything done. And they're the grinders and everything else. And so they don't want to be considered among the people who are not the grinders or not the committed. And I'd say, number one, you have to recognize that commitment starts at home, and it starts with you and that person in the mirror, right? Because if you're committing your entire life and all this time to work so that, you appear a certain way, I sure hope that that's your goal in life. I hope that you're comfortable with that, as the challenge for you and work perception is everything to you, then fine. But I will assure you that there are people who take their vacation, who make use of all of these things, don't feel guilty about it, and make sure that they're as productive as they need to be during the time that they're there. Oh, and by the way, part of the reason that they can be more productive while they're there is because they're giving themselves the self-care that they need, right? They're taking a vacation. They're giving themselves the opportunity to exercise, and get proper sleep. And so they are putting themselves in a place where they can also absorb and take the pressures associated with the job. Why? Because they've chosen to prioritize themselves and alleviate it too. So I would say that it's important to live your life in balance. And some companies are better about being encouraging about these things than others. Right? And I encourage you to find out, and it's a tough question to ask. You can't ask it in the interview. You got to find somebody who's either worked at the company, which is not always very hard to find, especially with larger companies, and see what their experience has been, in terms of self-care, vacation, family medical leave if necessary. Like, all of these things are extraordinarily important parts of your overall compensation package, but more importantly, they're part of your quality of life package, right? The things that you're going to need where if stuff comes up or outside pressure comes up, you have the mechanisms at work so that you can do the things that you need to do to live your life. Because at the end of the day, living your life is what this whole thing is about. It's not about you working a job so you can be a cog in the machine, but as long as you live and then they spit you out and replace you with another cog, no, your life is special. And you're meant to do things that are special, right? And you're meant to enjoy life. And so part of things is obviously organizing work so that you can be productive. But the other part of it is recognizing that being productive when it comes to the physical self, your life, your mental well-being, your feelings of self-actualization, the way that you approach relationships, and that stuff is going to matter to you. That stuff does matter to you. So you have to give yourself time to address those things. And I think you're silly if you think, well, it's just going to happen. Well, what just happened What just happens without you organizing and doing it on the job? Oh yeah, that's right. Pressure and chaos. Same thing will happen with your life and your relationships if you don't tend to them in an appropriate manner. The person who said they used to love you now feels neglected and is going to leave. Those types of things happen to people who get trapped up in work and whatever task they're in and forget about people around them. So it's about prioritizing things, man. They gotta go ahead and you can also automate and get help with that, man. I hear tell there's folks that will help you plan vacation. You can put it out there, know precisely when it is, organize everything all around it so that your leaving is a lot more seamless to the company, and then you can really focus on enjoying yourself on a well-planned vacation. Come back refreshed with them hot dog leg pictures that people be taking with the legs on the beach. Where they look like hot dogs, or black people they look like sausage. But
I just want to let everybody know this will take time, and thank you, Dr. Love, for throwing it this way. If you do want to take advantage of, having vacations planned down to the T, Flight 87 Travel is available for all your travel needs. See the world and the best it has to offer. Flight 87 Travel, a full-service travel agency.
How did I throw that to you on accident? My goodness.
Hey, it might have been subliminal. I don't know.
It's amazing how that works sometimes.
No pressure.
That's how they do commercials these days. They work them into the show.
They like the young folks say, no cap. But DJ, go ahead. I'm gonna throw it to you, man.
Yeah, man. So for me, balance is the key, right? Dr. Lovin alluded to it earlier, but when you think about this thing, man, workplace flexibility is something that's major for my demographic. I am a millennial. I'm on the very upper echelon of what the millennial age range would be, but workplace flexibility has been crucial. It's been critical for me. It's one of the reasons why I probably stayed in my role as long as I've had, or with my firm as long as I have, because in order to gain flexibility, number one, you have to be in an environment or a company. You talked about it a little bit earlier about, European companies. My company is actually owned by an Australian, and we're domiciled in Australia. And so there's mandatory leave for managers, and those jobs tend to be a little bit higher stressed. You're required to take 2 consecutive weeks off. So you're required to. Like, no ifs, and buts about it. You need to book it. You need to put it on the calendar. You take 2 consecutive weeks off. We have probably a more than generous vacation schedule than most. All in, you get about 30 days of vacation just as a standard employee. And that doesn't include holidays, or you can buy additional vacation or whatever. And workplace flexibility is definitely there. You think about working mothers. A lot of working mothers, if they're married to someone who's also in corporate, or someone, let's say a firefighter or a civil engineer, may have to travel for work, leave early, come home late. That working mother is often responsible for pick up, drop off of the child. Oh, the child is sick. I have to leave, go get the child, doctor's appointments, etc. Imagine an environment where there was no flexibility. How could some of the dynamic women that are contributing to these companies at such high levels be gainfully employed? So I think this is something that, if an organization is not doing it, they're probably missing out on top talent, because folks with responsibilities are just not going to work for you in that way. So going back to balance is key. I think you have a responsibility in that balance as well, right? So we talked about image and branding, and for all those who may have missed it, for me, your image is simply what people see, and your brand is what people experience. So in your career, if you are the type of person whose brand has been responsibility, accountability, dependability, you're going to get more flexibility than others. And I can guarantee that. Even in an inflexible organization, because you have demonstrated that consistency, you're going to have a little bit more flexibility than others because you shifted the mindset of those in control. And I'll tell you another piece of this. Dr. Levin alluded to millennials, right? There has been a shift in mindset in terms of taking your vacation time and what's important to you, because one thing is likely very true. Those boomers, and even those in the silent generation, most of those folks may have worked for one company their entire career, some two max. Most millennials have worked for 2 or 3 companies within the first 7 years. So they're not tied to don't take your time. You're going to be worried about what your peers are going to say. Most of their peers are taking their time too. And it's either use it or lose it policy, because folks are no longer allowing you to rack up on 100 days of vacation because, again, my parents, anything short of not being able to walk, you went to work. Same way they sent me to school. Hey, I'm sick. I can't go to school today. Can you walk? Yes. Where are you going? That type of thing. They went to work that way. Now, they probably infected a lot of people with a lot of things, being sick at work, but who cares? You were present, and that's what mattered during that time. People in my organization will tell you right now, hey, if you're sick, don't come here. You're going to get everybody else sick, and now we have a whole sales force at home. So things are changing and times are evolving. But it really speaks to what Dr. Loving talked about, is that pressure that the millennial generation has placed on the human resources professionals, because it's not just about the financial package that you offer. It's that quality of life package. Because my results matter as much as my attendance. So why do I have to be here in the office if I can do the same thing from home? Those questions are being asked. Those questions were never being asked before. And I guess finally, what I would say around this is challenging the narrative of what production and responsibility looks like. For all intents and purposes, if you ask my wife, how many days does Destrigan take off? She would just say none. Because even if I'm off, I take my phone with me, my laptop is with me, I kind of check it here and there. If something major is going on, I reach out. Because there are certain things that the X is just on my forehead for. And you reach a certain level where your accountability matters to certain people. And you can be away, but you need to be responsive. And I think you earn that flexibility because you're doing those things simultaneously. I can be away, get a little downtime, catch a break, but I can be responsive. If I'm going to completely unplug, who's accountable and who's responsible for that? So it's really about accountability and making sure that you have a system of checks and balances in place. But none of those things matter if you're not in a great state of mind, taking care of your mental health, like Dr. Loving said, some self-care. If you're not getting your self-care, you're not going to be any good to your job, but more importantly, you're not going to be any good to your family. And I think that is the overarching issue. I mean, it doesn't matter if you secure the bag, quote unquote, for a few years, if you're going to be out of here based on a high level of stress, anxiety, and depression. You're more valuable than your job. And I think people need to realize that. Dr. Levin says it all the time, people over things, but sometimes you got to choose you. It has to be you as an individual over things. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't point that out as well.
Most definitely. I think you alluded to a great point, is, the basic necessity of communication, to where, like you stated, the times are kind of changing to where people are now more receptive of, I'm taking my time and I'm going to travel. I'm going to see the world. I'm going to take a mental health day because I'm not going to, put myself under pressure. And communicating that with your management or your HR, just like, look, if I don't take a day, I'm not going to be at my best. And what you need from me is my best. So it's best for us, all of us, that I get this break or whatnot. So I think, the bare necessity of communication in this sense is is key, and a lot of people have to learn how to just communicate those basic necessities where it's like, look, I need this day, and you have every right to take it. So I think one of the pressure of maybe historical societal norms where we were raised by you were raised by parents and grandparents who were just like you said, they go to work every day, rain, shine, sleet, snow, ain't nothing right, almost coughing up blood, but can you still walk? All right, you going. And we've been kind of conditioned in a sense to, just be these so hard working because it's like, oh, well, look at such and such. He over there, got 2 kids and all this stuff going on and your arm broke, but he's still showing up to work. And look at you, perfectly fine. And you want to take a day off? What's wrong with you? And it's, we all have, maybe experienced it or seen it in some sense of fashion. But just simple communication can be the thing that helps you overcome that challenge of the perception of that pressure that is, should I, could I, would I take these days or use this time to make myself better? And if all you got to do is just simply communicate. But what I'll do is I'll throw it around to all of you, and I'll start with Dr. Loveman first to kind of, wrap it up and give you closing remarks on this topic because, I do appreciate the way that this topic has kind of framed itself in the sense of we really kind of honed in on maybe, the mental health aspect of it, and it's very well much needed in this day and time, like Dr. Lovin alluded to, and definitely stay tuned to the after show because we'll dive way deeper into it because we got a lot of issues going on that can be, attributed to, pressures, whether it be from society, or just, external factors, and then it turns to internal pressure from yourself where people are being hard on themselves and they can't take it and, they do the choices, make the choices that they make. But Dr. Lovin, I'll throw it to you to kind of wrap up and give your closing remarks, and I'll throw it to you, DJ.
Yeah, so, for me, it really is about just prioritizing yourself, right? Prioritizing yourself and your time is very important. And the way that you show yourself that you're important and that you believe in yourself is by setting those goals and putting those goals and breaking them down into tasks, and then looking at each task as a challenge and solving those challenges and getting better at handling the pressures that do come along with those challenges. But then on top of that, recognizing that there will be other pressure that's around you that may affect your performance otherwise, may affect the quality of life, and you're going to have to figure out coping strategies and ways to live your life so that you can deal with those pressures and rise to meet the challenges and make you a better person. And so, again, just recognize those differences and how that works, but more importantly, just organizing and moving yourself forward in a productive way and not being scared to reach out to get help in all of the ways that it might be necessary to get help. So that's all I have with that.
That's a very short closing remark from you, Dr. Levin. I think is you got a lot to say in the after show. So
I think we may, because there was a whole topic that we're gonna go over on that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can tell you tuned up.
Yeah. Go ahead, DJ.
I'll be brief as well. I would just like to reiterate a couple of things. You need to control what you can control. Things that are outside of your control, you are literally wasting your most valuable resource worrying about it. Worrying has never changed anything, literally ever, but it's something that we do so often. So I want our listeners to remember that your imagination is undefeated, literally. So as much, anxiety that you can give yourself with your imagination. Imagine if you took just a little bit of that and poured it into something positive, drafting a plan, like Dr. Loving said, automating some things to make things a little bit easier, surrounding yourself with people with complementary skill set that might help you deal with some of this anxiety. Again, maybe you don't want to call it help. Maybe it's advice. We're here for you. There's a group of professionals that are out there for you. if anyone listening to this podcast is suffering from any type of depression, any type of anxiety, I implore you to talk to someone close to you. And if you don't feel comfortable doing that, please seek the advice of a professional, because your mental health is more important to your well-being than any currency on the face of this planet.
Well put indeed, as usual. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, definitely stay tuned to the after show, because we, from what I can gather by the brief remarks from both of my colleagues, it's a lot that we got to say that we can delve deeper. And if you've ever listened to the after show, you already know this, where we pour a little more and we really get into it. So these are my closing remarks. When it comes to overcoming challenges and dealing with pressure, always keep in mind the pressure of perception, and whether it's your own or if it's societal inflicted pressures. Just put things into perspective and understand that it may not always be as bad as it seems. And like Dr. Lovin and DJ always alluded to, is prioritize. And we always say, Dr. Lovin always says, people over things. And remember, you are the people. Don't be afraid to do the things that are necessary to make sure that you choose yourself. There's an old song that some of you may or may not know, where it says, I choose you. Now, the song doesn't necessarily go into context here, but we just take that piece from it. I choose you, and you being yourself. Choose yourself. People over things. Make sure that you are the people. And, just keep that in mind. And since, this topic has driven us into this direction organically about, mental health and whatever, I will mention that the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, the number is 1-800-273-8255, and it's available 24 hours every day. Once again, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255, and it's available 24 hours every day. And like DJ said, I'll also extend myself, and Dr. Levin will extend ourselves. You can reach out to us on all our social media and our websites and our emails, any of that. If you feel like you want to talk to us, if you're done talking to people that are around you, because like we mentioned in the beginning, you can't. Sometimes it takes an unbiased, nonpartisan party to put things in perspective for you, to help you overcome challenges and deal with pressure. So we may be that party for you, it may be someone else, but definitely, don't give up in the middle of things, and take time for yourself. But for all of us here at the Brethren Podcast, we invite you to stay tuned to the after show, where we continue this conversation and get more in depth. Check us out on our Instagram at BrethrenPod. That's BREADRENPOD on Instagram. And you can check us at all of our internet domains. You can find Dr. Loving, PhD, at ajamuloving.com. That's AJAMULOVING.com. You can check out DestrianWellsConsulting.com. And you can also find me at MMBBGW.com. And like I said, we appreciate you all for listening, and stay tuned to the after show.